I love It Follows. I do. I just do. And I don't want to overstate it because it's a little movie. It's a small movie, obviously made on a low budget. It's a simple story, but I think it's well told. And I think it's smart in that it knows what kind of a movie it wants to be and it nails it. And I love the whole retro feel, that sort of ambiguously 70s, 80s, all the cars, the nondescript clothes that the teenagers wear, the haircuts.
But also ambiguously modern because she has that like clamshell phone thing with the.
Well, that's the one. That's the one thing.
Yeah,
and yet,
that's the only piece of like kind of modern electronical looking, you know.
And
thing
yet there is no such thing as that thing that she has. So it
No,
puts it in another timeline altogether.
And it gives us this wonderful kind of also fantasy feel to the thing,
right?
Because it's timeless. You don't know what exactly year it is, and the cars are old and new, and it's
and
just.
I would submit that the fact that it was like this clamshell kind of, that's a very hipster looking kind of cool, ageless, you know, decorative shape.
Yeah,
right?
well, it looks like a compact. It looks like
it looks like a compact, but at first I thought it was a you know, birth control pill.
Right.
Yeah, well, I can see that, the white plastic with the cute.
Which would be a funny kind of visual pun because the whole movie's about not having sex or having sex.
No, it's actually the kind of thing that someone's brainy younger sister would walk around with all the time. And was she reading
anyway,
Idiot?
The Idiot.
She was reading Dostoevsky.
Yeah,
that's great.
Anyway, it's weird probably to describe a movie that's about teenagers having sex and getting killed by a monster as adorable, but I think this movie's kind of adorable. I think it's cute.
Huh. That's an interesting reaction, I think.
It has,
you know, it's this adventure story with all these kids. The parents are barely there. The mom is just like seen in a couple of shots. And then it's just the kids are on their own. And they have that great last stand around the swimming pool, which is so obviously the last stand because they're all getting ready, plugging in all the...
And with their dumb teenager idea about getting a bunch of appliances, which is the dumbest thing a teenager can do, right?
Wait, John, wait. John, like, what? Are you like just waiting to pull the rug out from under us now?
Do you think because I'm not a horror guy that I'm going to say this thing is so stupid?
I had this literally queued up. And you're
and so now you're going to put it up anyway.
Well, now I got to like do this.
Come on.
I'm just like waiting for John to like shit all over this fucking movie and
I know.
Carry on, sir.
The shoe never dropped, dude.
I love it. I love it because it's a kind of horror movie that establishes a very simple premise and it follows its own rules. And it's not one of those horror movies that is why I hate horror movies, where they just throw a bunch of imagery at it. It's like, oh, now the sister's walking on the ceiling. This guy just burst into flames. You know what movie I'm fucking talking about. But
well,
there's a lot of movies. The Ring.
A ton of them, yes.
Like a bunch of freaky shit's happening. I don't know what the fuck's going on. This is a very simple story and it follows its own rules right to the end. It's like The Thing. It's like a Carpenter movie. It's like
bingo.
It's like a magical guy who can't die chasing kids around with a knife.
This is definitely a movie that's influenced by John Carpenter's work. This is definitely a movie
Romero.
Influenced by Romero, probably even, you know, a little bit of like Friday the 13th, kind of all those older you know, I remember when John and I did go see this, I could have told you guys, but like, yeah, I mean, I'm glad I didn't say anything until now, but when we came out, he actually was like, you know, I really liked that. Like, and I was kind of surprised too. He was
that
like,
surprised look at him.
And I was like, I absolutely adored that. And he's like, I think it was a really solid film. Like, he was like, and I'm glad that you still like it.
No, and it doesn't insult the audience. It's just it gives you a premise, it gives you a story, it gives you a universe. It doesn't violate the rules of that. And
Ish. How does it?
Well, so I love this. I'll get into the reasons I love this movie, but the one thing watching it again for the first time in a couple of years, and I did. In the meantime, I had read that like Quentin QT, who is a big fan, had a major issue with the third act, and I kind of agree with him on this because basically you have what appears to be a very dumb enemy. Mm-hmm. It comes at you really slowly, and it's single purpose. Just you keep walking toward you until it gets you. Yeah. Until you get to the last act, where it suddenly becomes clever.
Here, this part where it starts like screaming and then goes away, like what the fuck is that? Like,
well, the throwing the throwing the shit in the pool.
No, I'm talking about when it bursts through what Jim.
Well, yeah, there's also that piece behind Jim, but and I could kind of let that go because it's still kind of in the same. It's still just going to try to get me. But the throwing, the acting clever part.
Oh, throwing the stuff in the pool.
Throwing stuff in the pool was like, whoa. Like,
oh, now it's it's sort of more of a human being.
Now it got clever all of a sudden. Where another 9/10 of the time, it's just like this slow.
I don't know if the cleverness of that pool scene has any relevance that that was their father, by the way.
Yeah, that was her father,
her dad.
In the absence,
because she said because when her sister asked, "What does it look like?" she says, "I don't want to tell you."
Right.
Yeah.
It's our dad.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that has any. Maybe that's unrelated, but I don't know.
Was that their dad standing on the roof?
But that's like the one thing where like you might have a point in that they did kind of change the rules a little bit, but other than that, it's a mashup of like those fucking Japanese horror flicks from the early O's. Like
The Ring,
Grudge,
like the Ringu,
bolted onto a John Carpenter movie with, and I did notice Disaster Pieces music this time. I'm a big fan of it. I guess he did it in 2 days, which is
beautiful score. I love this.
Yeah,
score.
we can talk about the music.
I don't know who shot this thing, but it's got that kind of the
so.
Thanks for the black bar, John.
Perspective.
This
this cinematographer was a GoPro.
Right after this movie, this cinematographer was poached by M. Night Shyamalan to shoot Split.
Oh wow!
And he's shot every Shyamalan film since then. So Glass
Dang.
and
that explains a lot. Actually,
stellar to me.
Apparently,
I'm a
Shyamalan.
little bummed that the director doesn't seem to have done anything other than that one Under the Lake movie, right?
No, he did one. He did one before this. He did one before this that's excellent called The Myth of the American Sleepover.
Oh yeah, I heard of that. But after this, what has he done?
After this is just Under the Silver Lake, which is also, I think, wonderful. It's different.
Oh, is it good?
Yeah, I really liked it. I think it's not for everyone.
It's apparently a very like cult status movie. Like
no
one went and saw it in the theater.
People either love it or hate it.
Right. And a bunch of people love it and a bunch of people despise it.
It's the kind of movie where when I was watching it, I was like, I fucking hate this thing. And then after I watched it, I could not stop thinking about it. And I absolutely adore it. Like it's got so much weird. And also I will say, not to go off track too much, but the Under the Silver Lake has a single sequence that is scarier than anything in It Follows. The entire
That's
movie.
a bold statement.
Yeah.
I'll stand by that statement. But I still think this is the better film for sure.
When I first saw this, and I was just impressed at the fact that it was a small budget and it was so effective, But there's one shot in the beginning. I think when the second act starts or the first act starts, when they go to that boy's high school to find out about him, right?
Yeah, that's the shot.
The camera's at 360 twice. Just nice and slow, and you're talking complete trust in you as the audience to know what's going on, and I love that. It's like because the cameras keep spinning, and you got to figure out the geography of this thing. And
I know it. And did you guys notice that the walker is right in the opening of that shot?
Yeah, I know.
And then it's all the way to the end when they're in the car, still coming at them, still the same.
Yep,
that's brilliant.
It was just a really well put together sequence.
This movie works on people.
The director really knows to keep everyone looking at all the negative space around the actors.
Oh, the compositions are fantastic.
I got
because you never know which person it is that's out there in the background.
You do know a couple of things.
This guy's obviously not part of the family.
That's the scariest part.
There's a few sort of themes or rules here, and that's two of them are the person walking is either going to be naked or dressed in white.
Yeah,
that's it.
There's some, there's a bit strange, weird kind of a sideways sexuality that going there. The woman's kissing herself, or she has a boob out, or whatever.
Yeah,
and it's always something going on with that.
They're always in white. Like even when it's like her friend at the ocean, she comes up with a big white shirt on.
I mean, they had to sit down and think this through. How are we going to present this as being as creepy and weird as possible? And it's
it costs nothing, and it makes the monster really scary. In that every time you see it, it's something different, and you don't know what it's going to look like.
Right.
I'll tell you, the first time I saw this worked on me on a level. So some of you guys, I'm deaf in my right ear, right? Like as a fucking post since I was like 4 or 5. I used to have a recurring nightmare. I mean, it actually occasionally represents itself. If I sleep on my good ear, basically the only thing I can hear is my fucking heartbeat, right? So what that turned into over and over and over as a kid steps.
No,
But not like running steps, like walking steps.
Walking steps.
Yeah.
And it's this fucking movie where it's just like something is coming at me and it's walking slow.
That
and
hospital
it will
scene
not
must have
stop.
that hospital scene must have freaked you out.
A little bit.
Yeah. There's one thing you notice second time around is the art direction in general, in terms of how they decorated the sets, all the props, all the furniture.
Yeah.
It looked kind of ugly. All the houses were kind of looked like they bought everything at Goodwill. You know what I mean?
Well,
It
it's
looked
going
like
for
suburban. It looked like suburban Detroit.
But
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it did. But slightly worse.
But like John said, it's going for that sort of in between 70s, 80s. They don't want you to put a time. They don't want you to be able to put a definite time on this thing.
But this thing is it could have chosen to make everything bland and beautiful, like a major film. Easy. Just go out and rent different furniture, right? And have everything coordinate right. But everything is slightly off. The walls were pink and something else is green. Nothing worked. But that was great too, because it kept you on edge.
Yeah.
I mean, someone had to think this through. The art direction had to be really very thorough.
You guys mentioned the cinematography earlier, which I do think is fantastic. I think it's really, really good. I also wanted to point out, like, I love how there were little moments that both the director and the cinematographer, just the filmmakers, drew attention to, which was like a lot of like her hands with like flowers, like especially when she's like laying in the back of the car after they had sex for the first time. It's like her hands over the flowers before he, chloroforms her. And also when she finally finds him and they're sitting in that circle, she's putting grass blades on her thigh. There's just like these little beautiful moments that, other horror films just don't even bother with. They just don't even think about it. It's probably a waste of time to them. But for me, I thought it was lovely.
Oh.
So I wanted to like this movie, and I ended up not liking it.
Did you see it before?
What? No.
Oh.
I've never seen this before. I'm not a horror person, but there are horror movies that I enjoy. This just, I found it kind of dull in a certain aspect. Like, I wasn't scared by it, I guess, is really what it comes down to. Like, I never really found the scares to be effective. Like, that's not even scary. That's just weird. I knew that this guy was going to be back there. I didn't know what he was going to look like, but I knew he was going to be there. Like, I knew that there was going to be a scare at the hole in the door. Like, I knew all of that was going to happen. So it just didn't affect me when it did happen. And
I think those moments are less scary than the slow ones, though.
But I didn't find any of that to be particularly scary either.
The one behind Chris, when I first that cut to behind Chris, it was fucking horrifying the first time I saw it.
I started laughing. I literally started laughing. I was just like, this isn't. Are you kidding? Like, I was actually like straight up mad at this movie at that point. I was like, oh, I'm going to hate this. And it actually brought me back from hating it to only sort of mildly being uninterested in it. Like, I really did not think I was going to like this at all for the first 15 minutes of it. And then, like, the little things, the things you're talking about in terms of the filmmaking and the cinematography and the music. Good God, the music's so good in this.
It's wonderful.
But also it feels like this movie owes a lot to Brick. This really feels like the horror version of Brick. Like the same thing.
I think it's got that Brick spirit, that indie.
Well, there's no parents, and these people are acting in much more adult ways than you kind of expect out of younger characters like this. Brick also has that sort of, what time is it? Like, what time frame is it? There's a lot of the similar sorts of shots in terms of like looking up at people or looking into sort of empty backgrounds.
I forgot that's the one good film Rian Johnson made.
I think there's more than one, but yes, that's a great movie.
Think about this.
We interrupt this argument for this other argument.
Now, this film's kind of in the Napoleon Dynamite universe too.
Yeah, a little bit.
Weird time. Yeah, a little bit.
For sure.
Sort of just the mediocrity of the suburbs is the common.
And a kind of a timeless feel to it.
Yeah, I couldn't tell what year that was supposed to be either.
I wanted to point out one thing that I thought about watching it this time, because I think this is about the fourth time I've seen it. Well, one thing is I only had one real complaint, which I think the actress that plays the younger sister is just quite terrible. I don't know if anyone else felt that.
I didn't notice.
Okay.
I think this dude's actually not very good. Like
Okay.
the sister didn't bother me. This
Greg?
guy took me out of the movie a couple of times because he just seemed like he was in a different movie.
Guy that got rubbed to death by his mother.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, wait, but I wrote this down, and I'm sure this is. I mean, we all noticed this, but I was like, I just have to say this out loud because there's something in this movie that I think is just tells you a lot about men and women, and that is that a guy who has this death curse, right, and he knows it, he's got to find a woman and sleep with her and withhold that information, of course, until after he's done, and then lay it on her, and apologize profusely and say, I'm sorry, but this is how it, you gotta deal with this now. Versus a woman who knowingly has it, and all of her friends know it too. 2 men willingly still sleep with her. They still willingly fuck her, knowing that they're going to get this fucking thing.
Well, and the second one does it to prove how much he loves her.
But this is a comment on men and women. This is bigger than this.
No,
movie.
you're absolutely right.
This is about
still breathing and not beaten to death by her and all of her friends.
We will. If a woman is attractive, we will still sleep with her, even if we are going to fucking die and we know it.
No, you're making a comment about sexual.
A woman will never ever do that. Ever.
That economy and sexual politics, you make a very good point about that one. Although this leads to a spoiler question, I'll put the warning up. But the end, you see her friend driving around looking for hookers.
Yeah.
You think that worked, or you think he was too shy to do it?
I think he was too shy and he didn't.
I think so.
Well, it's still following them at the end.
The thing is, it's ambiguous. Is this?
We've learned like it to me. I rewound it.
You don't know. The great thing about that last shot is you don't know which one is following.
No, the wearing white thing. Now you tell me that. That's all I can see.
The thing at the very, very, very end of this movie on the sidewalk is wearing white.
Okay,
yep. So it's one of them.
Followed,
but you don't know. But you don't know if it's following her or him.
Could be both. Yeah.
Yeah. If the hooker's dead, he did sleep with the hooker, and now it's coming after her.
Yeah, because it probably didn't warn the hooker this is going to happen. The hooker just like, oh, look, a new John.
Right.
The end of it,
well,
right?
yeah, and if that sounds harsh, I'm sure that Jay didn't warn the guy on the boat that she slept with.
Yeah, she slept with all those guys on the boat, and they obviously got killed.
And they all got murdered. She was just like, thanks, guys, see ya.
Also, watching this, I figured out a good way of getting out of this. Go to an orgy. Think about it. It's like the creature's gonna have this list going. Okay.
Yeah, but can you be reinfected? But can you be reinfected? Is the question.
I love that.
You
It's
get
like
it twice.
That was
just
the
like
girl.
COVID.
That was another guy.
And then there's this other person. I think there's a horse involved, and I'm not sure exactly how to do this.
I mean, this thing's got nothing better to do than go around killing people, so it's going to get to everyone at the orgy.
Well, it's also one of the smart things about this script or this idea is it's also a huge just sort of exploration of one of the main tropes from a slasher film, which is if you have sex, you die, right?
Yeah.
In a horror film, and that's
this is very literal.
Made completely literal.
Yeah. Exactly. He's just going, you know what? What if we just made a movie about that?
Yeah, that was another like first 15 minutes of this movie where I was just like, oh, are you fucking kidding me? And then again, it wound it back. Like this movie almost got to me liking it by the end, just because like it was clawing back from those things, I think, really effectively. If it weren't for that first scene on the beach and then the incredibly dumb cut of her, like I probably would have actually liked it. Like that just took me so far. Like literally, I started cracking up laughing.
That's the goriest thing in the whole movie, and to me, that's the setting up the stakes. It's like, this is what will happen to you in this movie if you don't.
If you do not.
Yeah, but also, can this thing drive a car? Like I don't
think it could drive a car.
I think it kind of just materializes a certain distance away and then starts walking.
Or even if it does, like she's been there all night. I mean, that's the thing is like she drives out, she's been on that beach all night. It's had time to walk from her house or whatever.
Right.
I don't know.
She goes to California also. It'd take like about 4 months that thing to walk there. So
that's what he says is you can buy time by going further away.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
It was cool. It was cool that they showed like the homes of 8 Mile and shit though.
Yeah.
Oh no, that Detroit is definitely seeing all of its kind of glory in this.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny. Yeah. Do you remember, guys, that I said that the reaction was mixed at my house?
Uh-huh.
I wasn't talking about me because I liked it before and I liked it this time.
Sheila?
But Sheila, and the exact reaction Tad had, which was in 15 minutes, she's like, "This is dumb." This is dumb, and because she got the premise, and it didn't work for her. And then Brian, my brother-in-law, sitting there watching it with us, and I thought he would like it because he's a horror film fan, and he didn't like it either. He said that should have been called "It Sucks," not "It Follows." He watched it to the end, but he thought it was terrible.
I think you make a good point, though, or Brian makes a good point. I don't think this is a horror film for, I don't want to say conventional, but for lack of a better word, for conventional horror fans, this is perhaps not the film for you.
No, the ones I've stuck with.
Dumber Than the Ring.
Yeah, but the thing is, the ones I've stuck with lately, like that movie Ma and a couple of films like that, they're so goddamn stupid. It's like they make them all just for shock effect. It's like, it's jumping out and scaring you, and if they're monster films, it's all CGI, and it's this one it genuinely earns its place.
But that's always been the case with horror. You've always had the schlocky horror movies, and then you've had the ones that are much more intellectual. Like the Exorcist, and the first Friday the 13th, the first Halloween. Like there's reasons these are classics, and they made 75 sequels to them, which are all terrible garbage.
Yeah, right.
But even those aren't intellectual. I think the actual intellectual horror film is something of the last 5 to 10 years, to be honest. I mean, as sort of a subgenre.
Now,
I think The Exorcist is pretty intellectual.
That's a lot. That's more than just a horror film. There's a lot going on.
It is, but it's still a studio picture. I mean, for me, it really started with this film or the Babadook. There's
Babadook.
Babadook, yeah, I can see that.
Or of course anything by Ari Aster. But there are more intellectual than non. But speaking of Halloween, obviously we all thought of Halloween when we were watching this film.
Hold on, I'm gonna jump in here for a second. You ever seen? I've seen this about 2 months ago. The first Halloween. It's a lot dumber than you remember it being.
That's what I mean.
But it's really well. It's a well-made.
It's awesome, but it's not smart. It's not highbrow.
It's not a scary movie because he knifes teenagers and he can't be killed. That's it.
It's also it's great because it's first.
But hold on, Scott. What it also
and Carpenter's a good director.
Yeah.
Yes.
John Carpenter's a very good director, but what it also did, which I thought this movie was clever enough to kind of piggyback onto, is this concept of sort of bringing it into suburbia.
Right. Well, that's always people are vulnerable in suburbia.
Nice normal houses. You're vulnerable in your own home.
So I've been
new up until that point, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Last House on the Left, and they're out in the woods, etc. And then John Carpenter brought Halloween, plopped it right in the middle of downtown suburbia.
Right.
I've been writing a slasher film, trying to, and so I actually watched Halloween just 4 days ago.
Okay.
Or 5 days ago, which was, and it's been, I don't know, the umpteenth time I've seen it. And first of all, you're right. It's not a highbrow. It's not a
highbrow endeavor, but it's effective.
But it's so effective and good. And so it's so classic. And John Carpenter just directs the hell out of that thing. And I remember texting my friend, and this movie so I watched in this movie for the same thing, because I remember when this movie opened, and I thought to myself, why does this have the same kind of vibe? Why does it? And there's one actual physical thing I can point to in both films that from a filmmaker standpoint, you can glom onto and say this, and that is they don't have any cars on the streets.
Interesting.
Oh shit, you're right.
So there's something about that visual that feels just way more expansive and sort of you're no one is around to help you.
You're right.
That's very well observed.
The only cars that are there are the ones that the actors are participating with.
Exactly. That's exactly right. In both
there's the car that backs up in and causes the accident.
Yes, there's a truck. But if you
also
will watch Halloween again, though, no cars on the streets. No cars on the streets here either.
I think it's value. I think it's a valuable insight. We haven't heard. We haven't heard from Jim at all.
Yeah, I know he can speak because he just said something. So let's see what else he has to say.
My reaction was meh.
Yeah, okay.
That may be a little too emotional for my actual reaction. the first 5 or 10 minutes, all I could do was think about slasher tropes of, you have sex, you're the first to die.
Right.
And so I thought, oh, they may do something with that. But, and then it turned into The Ring, because I haven't seen many of those Japanese sort of existential dread movies. I don't know what to call them. Things with lots of
I think that's a good definition.
Wet girl movies.
Wet girl movies. Yeah, that's a good way to call it.
I mean, this is essentially a wet girl movie.
I think that could mean other things, Chris. That can mean very different things.
No, yeah, you're right. That came out totally.
Yeah.
But what else do you call it?
Not in the good sense of
damp girl movies.
Damp girl. There you
moist.
go.
It's moist is the most hated word in the English. Anyway, yeah, I wanted to hate this movie. I wanted to like it, but neither of those things obtains. It's just kind of
like you said.
Yeah. Sorry.
So you and Tad are kind of in the same boat on this one.
Yeah. Well made, but ultimately kind of ineffectual.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have to stop it a bunch of times like I've had to do with other movies that I felt this way about. For
it does chug along pretty well.
I actually, you know what, Johnny? I actually remember exactly what you said when we came out of the movie. One of the things you said that reminds me of a movie that I would have watched on VHS like back in the day or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
The filmmaker perspective, you guys, when you came out of this thing, you just walked, with pinwheel eyes, just walked into traffic after this is over. It's like, I could do this. I could do this.
And you have to, I mean, thank you for bringing that up, Scott, because it is different for John and I think sometimes when we watch something, because we look at it through a lens of like, shit, man, that's obtainable for like to make.
That's the thing. One of the things I love about this thing. It's obtainable.
Movie, I don't think.
Like when I watch YabtM Night, I'm looking at that too, and I'm going, Jesus, these guys.
Yeah, and coherence is another one where it flipped on that part of my brain.
I think there are discussion of YabtM Night, which of course is long gone because we didn't record it. You guys actually improved a lot of the things that film fucked up. You guys came up with the ideas of extending certain scenes to make them better. You know what I mean?
Oh, we were like rewriting the movie.
We wrote the movie while during the discussion, and it was actually I liked your version better.
It's all lost in time.
So
it sounds like are we wrapping up? Because I want to ask Jared how writing his horror movie is going, and I don't know if that'll be pertinent, germane.
Well, everyone's kind of like, I loved it. We have 3.
I love that. I love this movie.
And two thumbs up. Two thumbs up.
Okay. Well, 4 out. Oh. And a low kind of like was it 4 o'clock?
Yeah.
4 o'clock thumb from Jim.
4 o'clock thumb. There it is. All right.